I'm gonna be honest with you guys. It's been a long, stressful week, and I didn't really have time to plan out a video. The emo video took me about 12 hours total to shoot and edit, and we see how that worked out for me. But I won't let it get me down. That much. No, instead, I'm gonna do another ranking video because my Panic video did so well, and I want to see if I could get struck by lightning twice. That's the expression, right? Struck by lightning? This week, I'm doing another one of my favorite bands, the 1975. That's why I'm dressed like one of them. I think I clean up well. What do you think? I've been a fan of the 1975 for almost 10 years, at least since my senior year of high school, which was 2014. Am I that old? They've been a favorite of mine throughout my 20s, and with each album, they just get better and better. They're like a fine wine. Not that I'm much of a wine guy these days. They're one of the few modern pop rock bands that are really pushing the envelope, you know what I mean? Now, whether you like them or not, you have to admit that they're a band with personality. Hell, Matty Healy has enough personality to be a band all by himself. They're one of Britain's greatest exports. And I know their discography like the back of my hand. Wait, what the fuck? With these rankings, I'll only be doing the studio albums, since not everyone goes as hard in the paint as the rest of us. So you won't see the Face Down or Sex EPs or any of them, so I'm sorry. Once again, this is all just my personal opinion. These rankings are not definitive. And just because I put an album at the bottom doesn't mean I think it's a bad album. Unless I say it's a bad album. So without further ado, let's get into the 1975 from worst to best. Notes is a really interesting album. Sonically, it doesn't sound the same from one song to the next. It really explores different genres from like burial style UK garage to kind of Pine Grove influenced alt country. There's like a kind of emo core banger on the album, People, that doesn't sound like anything the 1975 has released up to that point. And like fun fact, around this time, A Day to Remember released their song with Marshmello. I think it was called Save Me or something, but A Day to Remember released a song. And everyone was like, holy shit, how does the 1975 release a heavier song than A Day to Remember? I'm sorry to all the other A Day to Remember fans. Tell me I'm wrong. This album was also the first time the band did away with their usual album opener. Up to that point, their opener was just simply titled The 1975, and it was a different variation on the same lyrics, you know, go down, soft sound, yada yada yada. This album went in a different direction and featured a spoken word piece from climate change activist Greta Thunberg over a sort of, you know, kind of nice, you know, explosions in the sky type instrumental. It was different, but definitely interesting. The singles and most of the tracks themselves are some of the best work that the band has ever done. The aforementioned People sees them doing their best Refused impression. Frail State of Mind, which has these amazing breakbeats to it. The Birthday Party, like a kind of weird country-tinged dream-like song. Me and You Together song, which sounds like it should have been in like one of those early 2000s road trip movies. And Roadkill, which has one of my favorite lyrics of any song of all time.
Nice.
But for all the good songs, there's other songs that just could have been B-sides. This album is bloated. It's front-loaded as hell. There are several instrumental interludes that have the band showing off their Sigur Rós influence, but at some point it all just becomes guitar wankery. The runtime of this album is 80 minutes. That's feature length and then some. It's not a bad album. Far from it. But it's just too damn long. I first discovered the 1975 in 2014 when I was in high school. I think I was up late one night, like digging through my notebooks and just writing the worst kind of emo songs you could imagine a 17-year-old could write. I had TBS on I had TBS on in the background and Conan was on. I wasn't paying much attention to the interviews. I can't even tell you who was on that night. But I can tell you who the musical guest was. The 1975. Up to that point, my musical taste had been very eclectic. I was a huge Beatles fan. I loved the 90s alternative of Counting Crows and Gin Blossoms and Third Eye Blind. And my favorite band was My Chemical Romance. What I'm saying is, I was open to experiencing and finding new music. In fact, I craved new music. I would listen to Radio 104.5, the only alternative station I could get in Newark, and I would just try to find any band that sounded interesting to me. This is around the time that bands like Two Door Cinema Club and The Naked and Famous were really popping off. And the 1975 could have fallen in that same category if they'd stuck with the sound on their debut album. This album is not bad. At all. You could see that the 1975 were a band that embraced experimentation, even in those early stages. They fused electropop, funk, R&B, indie, emo, all into this like 80s inspired John Hughes soundtrack. This album had all the early hits: Chocolate, The City, Settle Down, Sex, Robbers, and Girls, a personal favorite of mine. Even deep cuts like Menswear and She Way Out just like hit so hard. Why do I have it so low if I'm singing its praises? This was their first album. Like most bands, they sound nothing like they do on their first album anymore. Sure, there are whiffs of it still there, but they've progressed. For all the good that this album has to offer, it still just reeks of that 2010s indie hipster aroma. Not that that's a bad thing. I was a hipster around this time too. Are hipsters still a thing? But do you think they would be as big as they are now if they were still in black and white? Oh shit. Crying out loud, settle down. On the 1975's follow-up to their debut album, they took a much poppier approach. They embraced the R&B of D'Angelo, the lo-fi fuzz of My Bloody Valentine, and the sophisti-pop of Scritti Politti. The result was I Like It When You Sleep, for You Are So Beautiful, Yet So Unaware of It. A mouthful of an album. The album came out around my second year of college. I remember playing this album a lot when I would drive in between classes, usually to go get Taco Bell or Burger King or just something horrible for me and just greasy to get me through the rest of the classes that I would eventually fail out of. It was definitely a departure from their first album. That's one of the things I love about the 1975 and bands like them is none of their albums sound the same. You still have those 80s influences with songs like Love Me and Ugh. You have the down-tempo Change of Heart. You have the faith-questioning If I Believe You. You have the sound, which is supposedly about Halsey, but I'm not sure, so don't quote me on that. I got that from TikTok. And of course, like most 1975 albums, the deep cuts are amazing. I mean, Paris, This Must Be My Dream. This album tackles Matty Healy's addiction struggles at the time, especially with songs like Ugh. I think that's one of the reasons why I don't come back to this album as often. I think Matty is definitely a different person than who he was on their debut and even on this album. He's grown as an artist and as a person, getting clean. I think if I was him, I'd definitely look at a piece of art like this and be proud, but definitely feel like a sort of distance there. Being Funny in a Foreign Language is the perfect 1975 album. I think it encapsulates the essence of the band. And throw in producer Jack Antonoff and you have a recipe for a nearly perfect album. From the moment they released Part of the Band, I was excited for this album. The song sounded familiar, but not, if that makes any sense. The song has some of the best lyrics that Matty has ever written. Am I ironically woke, the butt of my joke, or am I just some post-coke, average skinny bloke, calling his ego imagination? And then to end it with a callback to his addiction, I've not picked up that in 1,400 days, 9 hours, and 16 minutes, babe. Gives me chills. Then after that, they released Happiness, this buoyant track with killer sax. I'm a sucker for some sax. Then after that, they released I'm in Love with You, the most unironic love song from the 1975. Every song on this album was like experiencing something new. Listening to this album was one of the most enjoyable experiences of my life. And once again, the deep cuts are fucking insane. Wintering, which sounds like it should be the theme song to a British sitcom about just a kooky family. Human 2, the hard hitter. And my favorite track off this album, Looking for Somebody to Love, is probably the darkest 1975 song, but the happiest melody? This album was huge for the band. They're currently on their biggest tour at their very best. And they're going to be touring the UK soon with emo legends, American Football. Please watch my last video. I'm excited to see where they go after this. I'm the kind of person who thinks of his life in terms of a movie or a TV show, with various plot lines and arcs, but especially a soundtrack. Every era of my life has different soundtracks assigned to it. Different songs I go back to that have different meanings for different moments. And every once in a while, there comes a single album that can define a certain time in my life. That sort of life-changing album that you only get a few times in your life. For me, one of those albums is A Brief Inquiry into Online Relationships. This was the album that made people pay attention to the 1975 and what they were doing. A maximalist experimental album about society's relationship with technology, this album was constantly compared to Radiohead's OK Computer. It was on literally everyone's year-end list. This was the breakout album. Around this time, I was working a minimum wage job at a grocery store, I was getting drunk a lot, and I just wasn't living my best life. I dreamed a lot. Making videos, making movies, songs, albums, books I wanted to write. I was just struggling in every aspect of my life, from my career to my love life. And when this album came out, I immediately latched onto it. It was on repeat. I wore that bitch out. But I never got tired of it. I bought it on CD, vinyl, and cassette. I list it among my top 5 favorite albums of all time. If you want to know what the rest of those albums are, I might make a video about it in the future. Subscribe. This album just came out at the right time for me. I connected with its themes of life in the information age, sobriety, recovery, and just the postmodern irony of it all. I come back to this album constantly. Like I said, it's one of my favorite albums of all time. When I want to listen to a 1975 album, I listen to A Brief Inquiry. It never gets old to me. It takes me back to a time when I didn't have much, but I had some great music to listen to. And that's really all you could ever want, right? I hope you enjoyed this video. I really like doing these ranking videos. They're fun. Do you agree with my list? What's your list? Leave it in the comments below. Give this video a like if you want to see more ranking videos and just more videos about music in general. I have a lot of great music-based ideas that I'm super excited about and I can't wait to share. If you're a music nerd like me, subscribe. I want you. You're welcomed here. My goal is still to get 100 subscribers by summertime. And if I do that, I'll have a 100 subscriber special video. I don't know what that's going to be yet, but I know it's going to be something big. If you're not a music nerd, find one and tell them that there's a YouTube channel for them to watch that's not Anthony Fantano. I post videos every week, so stay tuned for all that. I'll see you next time, and that's the end of the video. Goodbye.